Hi there. This was originally supposed to be part of another video about orc list building, and I decided to split them up because I feel like it's nice to have this information separate. Frankly, because I feel like it's the more important takeaway from playing yesterday. I will return back to where I left off in the original video now, and thanks for watching. Those are my thoughts on this list. I hope they help if you want to play Warhammer 10th edition. All that said, I don't know if any of this matters because I think 10th edition is bad and I'm worried about the future and I really don't have that much faith. Like that this was written by the same people who made 9th is like kind of baffling to me because 9th is my favorite edition of Warhammer. I had a lot of fun and I've been playing since 3rd and it's probably the best version of the game I've played as a whole. I like the older editions because they had a lot of flavor and heart and charm, but I liked 9th because I feel like mechanically it was the tightest. Basically every army was like pretty viable towards the end. It's definitely the largest amount of armies that have ever been viable in Warhammer, and like I don't know if like anyone paid that much attention to the end of 9th, but like majors and GTs had like crazy diversity in top 8s. Like there was like so much stuff being explored with Arcs of Omen. I feel like we didn't even really get to see that meta come into full light. I feel like there was still stuff being like discovered towards the end that was like really exciting and original, and people were inventing like new cool things to do with their models all the time. And that all feels gone now. It feels like a distant fantasy and a really beautiful dream we just woke up from to this like cruel reality of a game that makes no sense, that feels like it was made by someone who didn't really know what they were doing, care, or have enough time, or some combination of those traits. I feel like if there's one word I would use to sum up this edition, it's soulless. It doesn't feel fun or like a lot of care or thought was put into most of it. I think the missions are really good. I think there's problem. They're like little Mario Party-y, but I kind of like that. I don't mind some wackiness in 40k. I don't mind if 40k isn't perfectly balanced either. All I want is the game to be like fun. And I think most of what 9th rewards is not particularly fun. And what feels the most bad is that I don't know if it was made by people who really know why anyone plays this game. I mean, we can go over specific mechanics and like why Devastating Wounds and Anti together are bad, or question why it's 125 points for a squad of 10 Rangers. Why it feels like the AdMech book was written while someone was on the toilet and didn't talk to anybody else before publishing it. It just feels like there's a distinct lack of care about the product and game and community as a extension of those. The whole simplified but simple approach sounds really nice on paper. I feel like the design team interviews make it clear that they really like to say certain things that sound good and are hard to question if you don't know anything about the game. But if you hear them say those things and then actually play the game yourself, it's very clear that none of that lines up with the reality. And they're probably just full of some upper management that's good at selling concepts to executives without really knowing that much about the game themselves, and the executives don't question because they don't know that much about the game themselves either. As someone who works in entertainment and has worked for a lot of different companies within entertainment, this is something I've seen before, and the pattern feels really evident with Warhammer 10th edition right now. And I don't think it's that hard of a thing to do, honestly. I think you could have taken like OC and some of the fun concepts of 10th and just introduced them to 9th and it would be fine. And I've also seen a lot of fan-written rules for 10th already that feel like much better solutions for the game. And there's a lot of really talented people out there that could have solved for this, probably within Games Workshop too. Like, I don't think like every rules writer is to blame. It feels like it's an upper management problem to me. It feels like a lack of care and understanding and competency, because this is like catastrophic. I think it will be fine for casual play and Crusade, but I think tournaments are going to be bleak for a long time, and I feel like everyone I've spoken to who played tournaments a lot in 9th feels kind of similarly right now. I think the problem is not indexes. I think everyone expected indexes to be kind of shaky on release because it's a first draft and there's no way to play test every unit, and they're going to, I'm sure, like adjust over time to make them better, change data sheets and points and all that stuff. I love that the rules are online now and free. That's awesome. It's super accessible, and I think it'll get a lot more people to play long term if the game is worth playing. But the problem to me feels like it's like core rule stuff and like a massive like lack of understanding of the results of introducing specific rules would be. To go back to the fan made rule thing, I think there's a Goonhammer article. It's like a rant about AdMech where the writer rewrote the AdMech index, and I think did like a pretty great job. I think the solutions he proposed there are awesome. He's clearly someone who, he says he's not a game designer, but he clearly did a good job game designing, a much better job than whoever did the index pass of AdMech. And it's not just that they're like bad, it's that there feels like there's no flavor. There's like no like heart put in. I think 40k is like a very emotionally powerful, compelling, narratively strong and rich and storied universe. This isn't about balance. It's about like the heart of the game feels gone. There's a distinct lack of character and it feels very unimaginative, and like this was written by ChatGPT. 10th edition feels like if you asked ChatGPT to write an edition of Warhammer 40,000, this would be like the first draft. That's like literally how it feels. It just feels like the most like de facto lazy thing possible, which is a shame because I do think there's a lot of like good changes in here, but they're like so overshadowed by the bad that it's really hard to appreciate anything new at this point. Like, yeah, like I think the missions are cool. I like that characters can join units again. I think being able to move through your own models is really great. There's a channel called Fireside Chats, I think, with Vic Vijay. I think him and, David Gaylard, I think. Yeah, they do a really good job of breaking down problems of the edition and mechanics they feel like don't work. I largely agree with all their points. I think there's plenty of people that are breaking down the mechanics of 10th and like what mechanical changes could be offered to the game to fix it. So I'm not going to do that here. I might in a future video, but I feel like, what really bothers me the most about this is just how like thoughtless it all feels. 3rd edition and 2nd edition and Rogue Trader have a ton of heart. They're, I think, the most heartful editions of Warhammer. They're clearly made by like a small, passionate team that put all of themselves into the product and like really, really cared. The art's beautiful. It's the birth of the setting that still captivates people now. Everything I feel like has really been riding off the coattails of like 3rd edition and like the grim, dark stuff that was introduced in that time. And that just kind of set the ball in motion. And they more or less took those sensibilities and tried to translate them to modern times while keeping the core of the universe and sensibilities the same. Mechanically, 3rd is rough in some spots, but I think from a narrative perspective, I think it's very good. I think it's like wildly imbalanced, but I think like good game design from the perspective of trying to make a narrative sandbox for people to take models with rules and like do something with them. 3rd was created as something that could be played in tournaments, but was clearly mostly for like you painted these models that you like and you want to do something with them and have a good time exploring this universe and setting with your friends. And it's like immensely successful at that. I feel like 9th was a compromise of still having like the narrative flavor of 40k and making you really aware distinctly that like you are in this universe and these are the characters there and they feel on the tabletop like they do in the lore. I think they did a really good job at that while still also having like pretty tight mechanical balance. And there's like some issues, right? But I think like it was like pretty successful. I really enjoyed 9th edition. And they lost some like narrative flair of the earlier editions. Immersion wise, I think like some of the mechanics, like being able to see a model from any part of the model is like something that narratively doesn't really make sense. Like being able to see the banner pole of a dude or like a tiny bit of like a wheel of a tank and being able to shoot them as a result. Narratively, like maybe doesn't feel the best, but mechanically, I think it was a good solution. Same with like towing into cover to get the benefits of cover with area terrain. There's like a bunch of stuff that mechanically was advantageous to have, dropping narrative immersion from previous editions, but making it a better game for like strangers to just like approach each other and play and have like a good understanding of the rules, how they work, and like how these interactions are handled. They listened to community feedback. I think 9 just kept getting better as it kept going, and the end of it was by far my favorite part. And I think Arcs of Omen was sick, and they like knocked it out of the park with that book. It's like the most fun I've had playing Warhammer in a long time. I liked Nephilim too. Yeah, all that feels like forever ago, and I feel like they took 5 steps backwards overnight. Again, if you're a casual player, like you'll probably have fun with this edition. I think it has been like streamlined and simplified in a way that's like pretty fine if you don't like read it that closely. or like analyze it or like actually try to win in any capacity. But if you do those things, it falls apart immediately. If you just want to like play a game with your friends and not take it very seriously, or do a crusade, or like mostly use the rules as a starting place to like add your own mechanics and bring it back closer to something like third, where you're making up rules and stat lines and like having a good time, like putting narrative first, like I think it's like totally functional. But that's because you are doing all the work as a player, not because this is like a good thing mechanically. You are essentially modding 40k to make it a better game. And that doesn't feel like it should be the answer or like an excuse for what I see as just kind of like laziness and mismanagement of product. I'm sure the designers worked like really hard on parts of this. Like the missions feel super tight, and I'm sure there's Games Workshop employees who are like way more gutted about this than me. I know what it's like to work at a company and be very passionate about something, but feel like you are not able to meaningfully contribute to the final product because of where you are in the hierarchy of a company, and that's just like the way it is, right? So there's plenty of like amazing writers working on like the worst films possible in television and film. So yeah, I don't blame any like individual person at the company, or at least any individual one that I know of. I'm sure there's like a specific individual to blame somewhere, but I'm not like familiar enough with the design team as a whole to make that call. But it clearly like did not come together in the way they want. And now that it's like published as a rule book, I feel like you can make 10th like totally fine, but it would require changes to things like devastating wounds to maybe just give like an additional point of AP or something. It's not just that, it's like a million things like that I feel like would essentially be rewriting it. This feels like what should have been a closed alpha for 10th. This should never have been like released as it is. I'm just like someone who tries to be pretty positive about the game as a whole. I've like played a lot of editions and like never really encountered something that was like so frustrating to me that I wanted to stop playing. But I think this is like the closest I've ever come. Like I played in tournaments in 7th. It was like busted, right? But there was like some fun stuff. And I think the armies at the top were like relatively balanced against each other. And if you played any of like the meta factions of 7th, it was a good time. It felt bad that there was like a majority of the factions in the game that could not compete, but the ones that could, it was like okay balance between them. And yeah, I feel like we are back in like 6th edition. For anyone who's played like War Machine or Hordes, this would imagine how Mark III felt on release for a lot of people. It feels like a disaster of a launch, and I feel really bummed about it right now. I do want to go to tournaments. I'm just like, I love Warhammer and will like probably always play in some capacity no matter what, but it's going to be a real dredge. And what makes me feel better is that I do feel like the community as a whole like largely feels the same, at least like in the competitive side. So that these issues are like glaring to other people makes me feel better, because I feel like that's like what it would take to actually like result in any change. Like if the community is vocal enough, I'm hoping something will happen. And it would take like a lot of work, but I think like this edition can be saved. And I believe in whoever made 9th edition that they can make this real too. But yeah, this ain't it right now. I don't want to discourage anyone from playing Warhammer. It feels pretty hard to encourage them to play the game as a game right now, but I think Warhammer as a hobby is about a lot more than that. Like, all my closest friends I've met through this. It's a great excuse to see people as an adult. Everyone's like busy and preoccupied in their careers and lives, and it's the best excuse to get friends out of a house and like spend time together that I've found as an adult. So, and yeah, there's like a really good sense of community both online and like for me like in person, and like that stuff's all like super valuable, right? So yeah, I don't want to discourage anyone away from that, but I think it's like really hard for me to confidently recommend anyone play Warhammer 40,000 in its current state as a game. And I don't think it's something that will be solved when Codex come out either, unfortunately. I think it's going to take a lot more than that and like require core mechanic alterations to how 10th is currently worded. Like the charge phase is a good example. I can do a video that's separate on this at some point if people want, but I think it's like too complicated to really fully break down here. But basically the changes to the phrasing of the charge phase, I feel like results in people being able to do basically what they're able to do in 9th, which is like strange counterintuitive charging interactions where like a unit will charge a unit here, but end up just having one model touching them and the rest of units like spreads out to an objective that's like way over here or something. And you can still like not do quite that now, but basically that if you just pre-measure and move carefully enough and move block your own models, and end up with like pre-measuring the charge distance between you and the unit you want to charge in your movement phase, and then figure out where the model who's in the back of your squad needs to be, and then still like just kind of like shoot them off. It just requires like 10 times as much pre-measuring and finesse as it used to. And I think that like sums up most of these changes, and that like it's as janky or more janky than before, just like in disguise. And I think it will be really frustrating to new players once they meet someone who like knows how to do that. And as long as the ability to do that exists in the rules, I don't really see anyone stopping to do it. I don't blame people who take advantage of mechanics because they're broken. It's the fault of the game, always, not the player. I feel like 40k is this weird like policing culture if it doesn't exist in other games, where like if people use a like exploit, other people get really mad and like blame them as being like cheesy or whatever. If my opponent has like an insane uninteractive mechanic, I don't hate them. It's like the game itself I have a problem with, right? So I'm praying for 40k, but I feel like this is like a game that can be taken seriously in any capacity, is like on real life support right now. This is a pretty bleak video, but I'm gonna go back to other hobby stuff soon, and I want to like 10 so bad, so bad, and I'm gonna keep playing it anyways and hoping that I find something I really like about it. I think like if there is anything, it's gonna be in like the Mario Party-ness of like the new missions and like just how like wacky and experimental you can get. But yeah, I don't know, man. If you've played 10th, let me know how you feel so far. I'm curious to hear perspectives of people, both like from a competitive standpoint, but also casual people who are new to the game. And yeah, I'm praying for you, I'm praying for me, I'm praying for us, I'm praying for Warhammer as a franchise as a whole. Yeah. Thanks for coming by. I'll do as I keep going to events and playing, I'll do like list updates and things as I go. I'm excited to see Forge World stuff too, because I'm sure there'll be something cool in there. So I'll do some games with that and report back on it too. But yeah, thanks for watching this. Let me know what you think of 10th, and yeah, like and subscribe if you want to. See you soon.